Minerva. Welcome to today's sew-along video. Today we're going to be making the 9041 dress by Simplicity. The 9041 dress features a lovely wrap style bodice and a fixed sash that you can tie at the front or at the back. The pattern includes 3 different types of sleeve. There's View A, which is this long bishop sleeve, View C, which is sleeveless, and View B, which I'll be showing you today, which is this lovely floaty butterfly sleeve. You can also cut the pattern to 3 different lengths, so depending on your style, you can go for a full length skirt, a 3/4 length skirt or a knee length skirt. I'm going to be showing you the knee length, but it makes no difference to the construction process, so just pick whichever style you like best. There are 2 size variations to choose from too, size H5 which includes sizes 6 to 14 and option U5 which includes sizes 16 to 24. You can find both of these sizes on our website tagged just below the video. For today's sew along, you'll need your usual sewing equipment. I've got my domestic sewing machine here. Then you'll need your iron and your ironing board. Also some pins, tailor's chalk and a tape measure. A safety pin. A rotary cutter or fabric scissors. Some thread scissors and a hand sewing needle. And if you like to finish your seams with an overlocker, that's optional as well. For this pattern, I'd recommend a lightweight woven fabric. We've got lots of lovely woven fabrics to choose from, and today I'll be using this gorgeous Viscose Challis fabric. As you can see, this is a really silky, luxurious looking fabric, and it features a super cute pastel flower pattern printed on a navy blue background. You'll need about 3 to 5 meters of this, depending on your size and the version of the pattern you choose to make. But if you're not sure how much you need, there's a handy guide on the back of the packaging to help you work it out. You'll also need some thread. I'm using Gutermann's 100% polyester thread in the colour 387. As you can see, this is a perfect colour match for my fabric. If you'd like to use thread that matches your fabric, remember to click the Add a Matching Thread box on our website when you add the fabric to your basket. We'll need a little bit of lightweight interfacing as well. I'm using some iron-on interfacing by Fleece Line, which we sell by the metre and in little packs. Then finally, we'll need some 6mm wide elastic. Here I've got some general purpose elastic by Hemline, which is made from polyester and has a really good amount of stretch. As always, you can find all of these materials tagged below the video. Before we start sewing, make sure that you pre-wash your fabric. This is really important because viscose fabrics tend to shrink in the wash, and we need to get rid of all of that shrinkage before we put our dress together. Once the fabric has been washed and dried, we can start cutting our pattern pieces out in the fabric. There are 12 pattern pieces in total, but for version B we'll only be needing 9 of them. We'll be using the bodice front piece, the front facing piece, the bodice back piece, the neckband piece, the skirt front piece, the skirt back piece, the pocket piece, the tie end piece, and the sleeve B piece. The Viscose Challis fabric that we're using today can be quite slippery and it likes to move around a lot when it's being cut. So to make life easier, I'm going to be using my rotary cutter to cut out the pieces instead of my usual fabric scissors. But just do whatever works best for you, there's no right or wrong way to do it. Use plenty of pins to keep your pattern pieces in place and make sure that the arrows on each pattern piece follow the grain line of the fabric. Also make sure that you transfer any of the markings from the pattern onto the fabric. I'm just using my tailor's chalk here to mark any of the notches, pleat lines and dots. And then we can cut our pieces out. To reinforce the front facing and the neckband pieces, we'll need to cut these out in our interfacing as well. Now that everything's cut out, we can start putting our dress together. We're going to start with the bodice front pieces. To make sure that the slippery fabric doesn't warp out of shape, we'll sew a line of stay stitching around the neckline. I've got my machine set to a medium length straight stitch and I'm going to sew 1/4 inch away from the raw edge. Then we're going to construct the pleats. With the right side of the fabric facing you, fold the solid line at the centre front towards the dashed line near the side seam. For now we'll just hold this in place with a couple of hand stitches. Then we can move on to our front facing pieces. The front facing pieces have been cut out twice, once in our fabric and once in our interfacing, but before we can do anything with them, we need to fuse these two layers together. Place the adhesive side of the interfacing face down on the wrong side of your fabric. Place a damp cloth on top of the pieces. And then press them with your iron for about 8 to 10 seconds. The interfacing will make your facing much more stable. You can see here, one of the longer edges has no notches. We're going to finish this edge to stop it from fraying. I'm using my overlocker, but just use whatever technique works best for you. Then we're going to pin the edge with the notches to the neckline of the front bodice piece. Make sure that the right sides are facing each other. Then sew the two pieces together, leaving 3/8 of an inch of seam allowance. We want to keep our facing on the inside of the dress, so head to your iron, and press the facing and the seam allowance away from the bodice. We'll keep this in place by understitching as close as we can get to the seam. Press the facing to the inside of the bodice. And then we'll secure the end with a little bit of hand basting. Then on the right side of the bodice, sew a line of top stitching 1.5 inches away from the finished edge. And that's the front bodice finished. Now we can bring in the bodice back. Just like with the front, I'm going to stabilise this neckline with a line of stay stitching. Then, with the right sides facing each other, pin the bodice front pieces to the bodice back at the shoulder seams and the side seams. Use lots of pins to keep the fabric in place. Then we'll head to the sewing machine and sew the front and back pieces together, leaving 5/8 of an inch of seam allowance. Press your seam allowance open. To stop my challis fabric from fraying, I'm going to finish the seam allowances straight away with my overlocker. Next we're going to add the neckband to the bodice. We've cut the neckband out in the fabric and the interfacing, so as with the front facing we'll need to fuse these two layers together with our iron. Place the interfacing face down on the wrong side of your fabric. Then place a damp cloth on top of the pieces and give them a press, again for about 8 to 10 seconds. And then we're going to pin the neckband to the bodice section. Match the notches and dots on the neckband with the neck section of the bodice. Then we'll stitch the neckband and bodice together, leaving 3/8 of an inch of seam allowance. Once that's in place, we'll grab our iron and press all of the seam allowance and the neckband away from the bodice. Now we'll need our neckband facing piece. Take your tailor's chalk and tape measure and mark a line about 1/4 of an inch away from the marked edge of the facing. Press this under with your iron. Then with the right sides facing each other, pin the neckband facing to the neck edge of the neckband. Still with a medium length straight stitch, stitch the neck edge and the ends of the facing in place, leaving 3/8 of an inch of seam allowance. Take your sharp fabric scissors and clip into your seam allowance like so. As with the front facing, we need to understitch the neckline facing to keep it on the inside of our garment. So press the facing away from the neckband. Then sew a line of understitching through the seam allowance as close as you can get to the seam. You won't be able to understitch the whole way around, but just sew as close as you can get to the corners. Once you've understitched the neckband, place the folded edge of the facing over the seam. Pin this fold in place from the outside of the bodice. And then we can sew it in place very subtly by stitching right in the ditch of the neck seam. As you can see, the facing's been secured on the inside of the bodice, but the stitches are hardly visible from the outside. So the bodice is nearly finished now. We just need to join the centre front. With the right side of the garment facing you, lap the right front bodice section over the left. Make sure that the centre points match. Then hand stitch the overlap in place along the lower edge. Now it's time to add our sleeves. Like I said, today I'm going to be showing you option B, which is the butterfly sleeve. But if you'd like to make one of the other options, you can find all the steps for these in the instruction sheet that comes with the pattern. For option B, we just need one sleeve piece for each arm. To make sure the sleeve can be eased nicely into the armhole, we need to gather the fabric a tiny bit at the shoulder section. Select the longest straight stitch on your sewing machine, and with the right side of the fabric facing up, we're going to sew a line of stitching between the shoulder notches. Leave the loose threads hanging at each side, and then sew a second line 4/8 of an inch away from the edge. Once those gathering stitches are in place, we can construct the underarm seam. Pin the two underarm sides together . Select your medium length straight stitch again, and then stitch the sleeve closed, leaving 5/8 of an inch of seam allowance. Finish the seam allowance with your preferred technique. And then press the seam open with your iron. Now to hem the sleeve, we're going to head to the sewing machine and sew a line all the way around 5/8 of an inch away from the raw edge. Then using our iron, we'll press the hem up at the line of stitching. And then fold the raw edge under to meet the crease and press again. I'm going to secure it with a couple of pins. Then we'll finish it off by stitching the hem in place on our sewing machine. And that's it finished. Repeat all of these steps to make the second sleeve. Now the sleeves are ready to pitch into the armholes. Turn your sleeve so that the right side is facing out, and turn your bodice so that the wrong side is facing out. Place your sleeve in the armhole. Make sure that the right sides are facing each other, and then start to pin the sleeve in place. Use your pins to match up all of the notches and the dots around the shoulder. And then we can pull on the loose threads that we left earlier to ease the sleeve head into the armhole. Slide the fabric as evenly as you can along the thread until there are no big puckers or tucks. Secure it with lots of pins. Then we can head to the sewing machine and stitch it together, leaving 5/8 of an inch of seam allowance. Once you've stitched right the way around, move your needle to about 1/8 of an inch away from the seam and sew another line alongside it. This will give the seam some extra strength. Finish your seam allowance. And then press the seam allowance just around the shoulder to shrink out any fullness. That's the bodice section completely finished, so we can move on to the skirt section. We have 4 pieces for the main skirt section, 2 skirt front pieces and 2 skirt back pieces. You can see here, the waist edge on all 4 pieces is curved. So as with the neckline on the bodice, we'll need to stay stitch these curved edges to stop them from warping out of shape. Head to the sewing machine and sew a line of stitching 1/2 inch away from the raw edge. Now we can put the skirt front and the skirt back together. Take one of the skirt front pieces and pin it to the other one down the centre front. Then stitch the 2 pieces together, leaving 5/8 of an inch of seam allowance. Join the back skirt pieces in exactly the same way. Then we'll pop over to the iron and press the seam allowances open. Just like with the other seams, I'm going to overlap the edges just to stop them from fraying. Before we join the front and back of the skirt, we need to add the pockets. Take each of your 4 pocket pieces and we're going to overlock the curved edge. Then with the right sides facing each other, pin each pocket piece to the side of a skirt piece. Match up all of the notches at the side. And then stitch each pocket piece in place, leaving 3/8 of an inch of seam allowance. We're going to finish the seam allowance, but before we do that you want to make sure you can see the dots and notches on the side seam very clearly. I'm just quickly going over them with my tailor's chalk. Finish the seam allowance with your preferred technique. And then press the seam allowance towards the pocket. Next, take just the front skirt and we're going to sew a little line of understitching through the pocket seam at each side. Now we can join the front and back skirts together. Pin the 2 pieces on top of each other with the right sides facing. And pin the 2 pieces together down the side seams. Then, leaving 5/8 of an inch of seam allowance, we're going to stitch down the whole length of the side seams, except between these dots. You can see here there's a good sized gap for the pockets. We just need to join the 2 pocket pieces. Pin the front and back pocket piece together down the curved edge. And then starting at the side seam, stitch the pocket together. we'll leave the top edge of the pocket open for now. Take your scissors and clip into the seam allowance just below the pocket. Then using the iron, we'll press the pocket and the seam allowance towards the front of the skirt. And keep the pocket in place with a quick line of hand stitching. You want to repeat these steps on both sides. We're going to hem our skirt exactly the same way as we hem the sleeves, so head to the sewing machine and sew a line all the way around 5/8 of an inch away from the edge. Then using our iron, we'll press the hem up at the line of stitching. Then fold the raw edge under to meet the crease and press again. Secure the hem with your pins. And then stitch the hem in place. The skirt section and the bodice section are both finished now, so all that's left to do is to join them together and add the ties. With the right sides facing each other, pin the bodice to the skirt section. Match up the side seams, centre seams and the notches. Then stitch the two pieces together, leaving 5/8 of an inch of seam allowance. Once you've sewn that first line, grab your tailor's chalk and mark a 1 inch wide gap at the centre back. Then starting at the gap, sew another line 3/8 of an inch away from the first line. Sew right the way around and stop just before you get to the gap. This is where your elastic comes in. the elastic to fit your waist. Then attach one end of the elastic to your safety pin. Feed it through the channel between the two lines of stitching. And when it comes out the other end, pin the two edges together with about 1/2 inch of overlap. Stitch the ends together. Tuck the elastic inside the waistband. And stitch your 1 inch wide opening closed. You can finish the raw edge however you like. Then we'll press the seam allowance towards the skirt. And just like that, we have a dress. Now it's time to add the final finish, the ties. Take one of your tie pieces and fold it in half lengthways. Pin the fold in place along all of the edges. Then using your tailor's chalk, mark a 5 cm gap on the longer edge. We're going to leave 5/8 of an inch of seam allowance and sew the fold in place at all edges apart from at the gap. Trim your seam allowance right down. And use the opening to turn the tie through to the right side. We now need to close the opening with a little bit of slip stitching. So take your hand sewing needle, double thread it, and tie a little knot in the end. To start our slip stitch, we're going to hide the knot in the seam allowance, right at the edge of the gap. And we're going to stitch the gap closed from the inside. Insert the needle into the fold opposite your knot, then bring it out about 1/4 inch away. Repeat this on the opposite fold, and continue in the same way until you reach the end of the opening. When you reach the end, pull your thread tight and tie a little knot in the seam allowance. And you can see there, you can hardly see the stitching from the outside. Repeat these steps to make the second tie. Then we'll attach our ties to our dress. Line the shortest edge of the ties up with the side seam. Hold it in place with some pins. And then we'll head to the sewing machine one last time to stitch the ties in place. Ta-da! We've made our 9041 dress in this gorgeous Viscose Challis fabric. I hope you had a great time making your dress. Let us know how you got on in the comments down below, or post a photo of your make with the hashtag Simplicity9041. As always, all of the materials used today can be found tagged below the video, and if you enjoyed today's project, make sure you check out the other patterns we have in stock too. If you'd like to see a tutorial for any more sewing patterns, let us know in the comments section below. Thanks for joining us today, and be sure to follow Minerva for more videos soon. See you next time!